On December 21st, 2020, in response to growing religious hatred, discrimination, and stigma, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed February 4th as the International Day of Human Fraternity. The International Day of Human Fraternity promotes interfaith harmony and dialogue, mutual respect, and peaceful coexistence between religions, faiths, and cultures worldwide. It invites us to celebrate our diversity, shared human values, and heritage as one humanity. The resolution acknowledges the historic Document of Human Fraternity, co-authored and signed on February 4th, 2019 by His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed El-Tayeb. Let us all work together for peace and harmony in the spirit of human fraternity.
And good morning, everyone, from New York, and good afternoon and good evening from wherever you are joining us. I would like to welcome you all to this special event dedicated to celebrating the International Day of Human Fraternity within the International Interfaith Harmony Week, which is being observed for the first time at the United Nations. The United Nations Alliance of Civilizations is very pleased to be hosting today's event in partnership with the Permanent Mission of the United Arab Emirates and the Permanent Mission of Egypt and the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity. My name is Nihal Saad. I'm the Chief of Cabinet and spokesperson in the Office of the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, and I'm privileged to be the moderator of this event. Mr. Miguel Moratinos, the High Representative, is also joining us live from Madrid. Before we start, please allow me to provide some housekeeping notes that most of us must also be familiar with for almost 11 months of virtual meetings, WebExing, Zooming, and MS meetings. So please ensure that your video is on so that you can be seen by everyone. Please mute your microphone when you are not speaking, and please make sure the microphone symbol is red, which means you are muted. For those who have inscribed on the list of speakers, kindly limit your intervention to 3 minutes as we have a long list of speakers. As we speak, the event is being live streamed on UNTV webcast, which can be accessed through the link www.unaoc.org/humanfraternityday/. Our social media team will be live tweeting this event. I invite you to follow us, like us, or retweet us using the hashtag Human Fraternity. Now, let's get started. The United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, sets the scene with a video message. Let's take a listen.
I am pleased to welcome the first International Day of Human Fraternity in World Interfaith Harmony Week. I applaud all member states that co-sponsored the United Nations General Assembly resolution proclaiming the 4th of February as the International Day of Human Fraternity, especially the United Arab Emirates and Egypt for co-facilitating the process. I also acknowledge the significance of the 2019 publication of Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together. Co-authored by His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed El-Tayeb, this declaration is a model for interfaith harmony and human solidarity. I thank both religious leaders for using their voice to promote interfaith dialogue, mutual respect, and understanding across the faith spectrum. In these trying times, we need this spirit more than ever. Around the world, deep-seated discrimination, acts of intolerance, and hate crimes persist against people simply because of their religion or belief, ethnicity, gender, or sexual orientation. Such vile acts are an effort to internationally agreed human rights and the values of the United Nations. Cultural diversity and freedom of belief are part of the rich tapestry of our civilizations. As we commemorate the International Day of Human Fraternity, let us commit to do more to promote cultural and religious tolerance, understanding, and dialogue.
I'm sorry, I think we have a problem with Mr. Moratinos because we cannot hear you. Mr. Moratinos, can you hear us?
Sorry. Now the sound is okay.
Excellent. Please start from the beginning.
Okay, so I wish to welcome all the distinguished participants who have joined us today. And of course, I thank the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, for his video message. As you are aware, less than 2 hours ago, the Secretary General received Human Fraternity Award in a virtual ceremony in Abu Dhabi. And the award is in recognition of his pivotal role and the work of the United Nations to advance peace and human dignity. The Secretary General announced that he will donate the monetary prize associated with this award to the UN Refugee Agency in support of his work for the most vulnerable. But I also salute my dear friend, Your Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Idris, the permanent representative of Egypt, and my dear friend, Your Excellency Ambassador Lana Nusayri, the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates. And of course, Your Excellency Judge Mohammed Abdel Salam, Secretary General of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity. In preparation of my remarks today, I drew inspiration from Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Magna Carta of all humankind. It states, all human rights, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. For hundreds of years, the prophet and religious messenger throughout history have preached a similar message of peace, love, and fraternity. In modern times, two great religious leaders, two different faiths, manifested their belief in these human values in one extraordinary document that they co-authored and signed together in a day like today, 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates. The document of Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together is a real true manifestation of interfaith dialogue and harmony. In introducing this document to the world, His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence, the Grand Imam Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayeb, are leading by example and using their clearer moral voice to inspire hope, humanity, and human dignity. The principal trends in the blueprint are aligned with the core values of the United Nations Charter, namely to reaffirm the dignity and worth of every human being, regardless of his person, religion, belief, ethnicity, gender, or culture. As we have just heard the powerful words of the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who was among the first to acknowledge the value of the document. In April 2019, right after his meeting with His Eminence, the Grand Imam Al-Azhar in Cairo, Mr. Guterres asked me to circulate the document to all member states. Since that date, I have been working closely with the chairman of the Higher Committee, Eminence Cardinal Miguel Ayuso, and his Secretary General, my friend Mohammed Abdel Assad, to implement the document. In that context, I was extremely pleased that UN General Assembly adopted a resolution proclaiming the 4th of February as the International Day of Human Fraternity. I echo the Secretary General words in applauding member states that to co-sponsor the resolution, and especially the co-facilitator, the United Arab Emirates in Egypt. Observing an International Day of Human Fraternity is needed now more than ever before considering the probable fragmentation of our world today. We are not only facing the ramification of pandemic, but also the contagious virus of hate, discrimination, and racism. The antidote, or best antibodies to hate, is human fraternity, which embodies compassion, solidarity, unity, and mutual respect. The United Nations Allies of Civilization stand ready to work with all member states, religious leaders, and civil society to strengthen interreligion and intercultural dialogue in order to enhance mutual respect, cultural diversity, and freedom of religion and belief. Let's be inspired also by the last encyclic of His Holiness Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti. Let's be all fratelli, my dear friend, engaged and committed to contribute to a better world where there are many cultures, many religions, many civilizations, but are one humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, Mr. Miguel Moratinos. Indeed, the antidote for hate, discrimination, and racism is human fraternity, which embodies solidarity, unity, and mutual respect. Very beautiful words. And we would not have been here today if it was not for the UN General Assembly A/75/200 proclaiming February 4th, an International Day of Human Fraternity. The resolution takes note of efforts and initiatives aimed at promoting interreligious and intercultural dialogue, including the meeting between His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed Al-Tayyib, on 4th of February 2019 in Abu Dhabi. That resulted in the signing of a document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. It also invites all member states to further promote a culture of peace, tolerance, inclusion, understanding, and solidarity. The resolution was co-facilitated by the United Arab Emirates and Egypt. So why is this resolution so important, and what is the significance to proclaim an International Day of Human Fraternity? The permanent representative of Egypt, His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Fathi Idris, takes the floor and tells us a little bit more about this resolution.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. In the spirit of fraternity, allow me at the outset to express my thanks and gratitude to all of you, our esteemed participants, for being with us today. I wish to thank His Excellency Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and His Excellency Miguel Moratinos, the UN High Representative for the Alliance of Civilizations, for their continuous support to promoting peace and dialogue. Excellencies, for the first time, the world is celebrating the International Day of Human Fraternity on February 4th of this year. After a resolution to that effect was jointly submitted by Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and the Kingdom of Bahrain, and was adopted in the General Assembly by consensus in December 2020. We may all agree that the international community is in dire need to promote tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and interfaith dialogue between communities. Unfortunately, the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic contributed in the rise in the hate speech, xenophobia, religious bigotry, and other forms of discrimination. The world increasingly requires global measures based on unity, solidarity, and stronger multilateral cooperation. In this context, the United Nations, through various resolutions, has expressed deep concerns about the acts that advocate hatred and intolerance. The United Nations has also called to promote a culture of peace, including through raising awareness about the common values shared by the mankind. Indeed, promoting, let me just throw this interruption. The United Nations has also called to promote a culture of peace, including through raising awareness about the common values shared by all humankind. Indeed, promoting interreligious coexistence can play an important role in preventing conflict and fostering peaceful societies conducive to the fulfillment of the global aspirations of SDGs. To this end, Egypt and UAE, in coordination with sister and friendly countries, exerted active diplomatic efforts to build consensus among all member states of the UN on the resolution entitled International Day of Human Fraternity. Choosing February 4th as the day which the Grand Imam, Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayyib, Sheikh of Al-Azhar, and Pope Francis of the Vatican signed the document entitled Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together in Abu Dhabi in 4th of February 2019. This document represents a significant humanitarian and historical event that carries a message of peace, love, fraternity, and most important, hope to the entire world. It calls for undertaking serious efforts to spread the culture of tolerance and coexistence and reject extremism, intolerance, and hate in all their forms. The GA Resolution 75/200, which proclaimed February 4th as the International Day of Human Fraternity, refers to the Human Fraternity document, expressing grave concern over actions that incite religious hatred and thus undermine the spirit of tolerance and respect for diversity. It also notes the valuable contribution that people of all beliefs make to humanity and the values shared by all human beings, irrespective of their group identities. The resolution particularly highlights the importance of raising awareness of different cultures and beliefs, in addition to the importance of education in promoting tolerance. Accordingly, the resolution calls for strengthening interfaith and intercultural dialogue among all groups in order to promote social stability, respect for and acceptance of diversity, and the creation of an environment conducive to achieving peace and mutual understanding at the global levels, as well as regional, national, and local levels. Such a step is critical now more than ever to encourage governments, civil society, religious leaders, media outlets, and others to take practical actions to demonstrate solidarity between communities and peoples. Excellencies, to conclude, the interests that Egypt attaches within the framework of multilateral diplomacy to the UN to the promotion of a culture of peace, tolerance, and religious freedom reflects its belief in coexistence and its efforts to promote constructive dialogue among religions and societies in order to address discrimination, stereotyping, and stigmatization which people are exposed to because of their religious beliefs. In conclusion, we believe that we should set the examples ourselves. We should respect others, even if we do disagree with them, in order for others to respect us, even if they disagree with us. We do believe that the path to the future and the way forward to counter global threats start from a belief in human fraternity. There is a need to intensify initiatives to curb extremism in all its forms and to address hate speech and incitement by promoting a culture of peace and rejecting violence. Thank you, and the happy 4th of February Human Fraternity Day.
I thank the permanent representative of Egypt, His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Idris, for those informative words. And indeed, the way to the future is really entrenched in the belief, the genuine belief in human fraternity. Thank you very much for your words. I move on now. Distinguished speaker, Her Excellency Ambassador Lana Zaki Nusayba, the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates. And the celebration of human fraternity perhaps crowns the efforts of the United Arab Emirates, which declared 2019 as the year of tolerance. But even very long before that, the virtue of human coexistence was known to have been instilled in the people of the United Arab Emirates by the late Sheikh Zayed. Your Excellency, Ambassador Nusayba, along those lines, how is the United Arab Emirates translating the document of human fraternity into action? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nihal, for your kind words about the United Arab Emirates and Excellencies. This is indeed a proud day. I am so pleased to join you all to celebrate the first International Day of Human Fraternity, and I think it gives us all a sense of hope to see people coming together from across the globe to promote interreligious dialogue and speak up against religious bigotry and other forms of discrimination. And I would also like to personally offer my congratulations to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Mrs. Latifa Ibn Zitan on receiving this week the 2021 Zayed Award for Human Fraternity. We commend their commitment to foster peace and reconciliation globally, as well as the Secretary General's pledge to donate his prize money to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And the plight of refugees, as we all know, is very close to the Secretary General's heart. Today, now more than ever, all of us have a role to play in fostering peaceful and inclusive societies. And tragically, hate speech is becoming too prevalent around the world. Violence against places of worship and minorities continues to escalate. And social media is being exploited to disseminate what can only be described as vicious propaganda. And these challenges are, of course, exacerbated, as we have seen, by the COVID-19 pandemic, which has highlighted deep-rooted inequalities. We look to history for our lessons, and history has repeatedly demonstrated how hate speech and incitement to violence, if not clearly debunked, denounced, and opposed, lead to greater dangers, such as genocides and crimes against humanity. So we believe in the UAE, to answer your question, that the international community has a critical role to play as we collectively seek to turn this tide. And the UAE's model, as what is seen as a progressive and stable society, is built, as you mentioned, on the principles of inclusion and acceptance of each other. So today, for example, we talk the talk and walk the walk. The UAE is home to more than 200 nationalities, several faith communities that peacefully coexist and thrive in a very challenging region. But we also understand that creating peaceful societies at home is not enough. In a region that has suffered enormously from violence and extremism, we're committed to fostering harmony between religions, cultures, at the regional but also the global level. And that's why we've been choosing and focusing on this topic of advancing inclusion as a key priority for us as our country seeks an elected seat on the UN Security Council for the 2022-2023 term. Because it's in line with these efforts that we introduced, together with my dear colleagues and close friends, Bahrain, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia, this UN resolution that we are discussing today, proclaiming today as the International Day of Human Fraternity. And of course, as has been mentioned, the initiative was inspired by the document on human fraternity that was signed on February 4th, 2019 in Abu Dhabi. This document, which we hope will serve as an inspiration to future generations, highlights several fundamental principles that aim to create a culture of peace, diffuse religious and cultural tensions, and protect the rights of minorities and the most vulnerable. But for our efforts to succeed in this area, we as an international community must take some critical steps, and I'd like to turn quickly to those practical steps in my concluding comments. First, we must enhance our systems that detect and analyze hate speech so that we can better understand how it proliferates and evolves. Partnerships with technology companies are crucial for identifying and then removing online hate speech, and we must pursue those partnerships. Secondly, we need to raise awareness of the threat posed by hate speech. Media campaigns and education can be powerful tools to help people recognize and reject hateful messages, but we must come together and amplify our messages. Thirdly, we must strengthen our legal frameworks nationally to combat discrimination, in addition to protecting places of worship. And in this regard, we welcome the resolution titled Promoting a Culture of Peace and Tolerance to Safeguard Religious Sites that was adopted on January 21st, 2021, helping create an international framework for this endeavor. And fourth, we need to strengthen partnerships with religious leaders. This is so critical. and they are critical to fostering interreligious and intercultural collaboration. A successful example of this was the call from the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity for a global day of prayer on May 14th last year to demonstrate unity against the pandemic, but also to highlight our togetherness around the globe in facing the same challenges. And finally, we must create an environment where places of worship of different faiths can peacefully coexist. In this effort,
different screens.
the UAE is constructing the Abrahamic Family House, which will consist of a mosque, church, synagogue, and educational facility. As we continue to launch initiatives to foster interfaith harmony, we affirm the need to mainstream regional and global efforts. The UNAOC and broader UN system can count on the UAE as a partner in promoting interfaith and interreligious dialogue to maintain international peace and security. And thank you, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the remarks here today.
Your Excellency, the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates, Ambassador Lana Nusayba, thank you very much for your informative speech. Talking the talk and walking the talk is definitely key to turning words into action, and particularly when it comes to the implementation and the operationalization of this document, important document, the document of human fraternity. All the points that you have raised are very important and should be considered as the pathway to implement that powerful document. Thank you very much again, and congratulations on the February 4th as an International Day of Human Fraternity. And we move on to the next segment of our program. The last speaker in this segment is His Excellency Judge Mohammed Abdul Salam, Secretary General of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, which was established in August 2019 to implement the document of human fraternity. In December 2019, members of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity visited New York and met with the United Nations Secretary General. Earlier today, actually a few hours earlier today in Abu Dhabi, the Higher Committee held their own celebrations of the International Day of Human Fraternity. I now invite His Excellency Judge Mohammed Abdul Salam to deliver his remarks, which will be accompanied by a consecutive interpretation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nihal. Allow to me to speak in Arabic, please. And then you can hear translation. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. معالي الأخ العزيز الصديق ميغيل موراتينيوس، سعادة السفيرة العزيزة لانا زكي نسيبة، سعادة السفير محمد إدريس، السادة الحضور، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في البداية اسمحوا لي أن أتوجه بخالص الشكر والتقدير لتنظيم هذا اللقاء الهام، وأتوجه من كل قلبي بخالص التهنئة لمعالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة أنطونيو غوتيريش، هذا الرجل الصادق الذي يعمل من أجل الإنسانية بحق، والذي تشرفت حين أعلنت بالأمس قرار لجنة التحكيم المستقلة باختياره هو والسيدة لطيفة بن زياد للفوز بجائزة زايد العالمية للأخوة الإنسانية في نسختها 2021، وهو أول شخص يكرم بهذه الجائزة مع السيدة لطيفة بعد أن تلقاها الإمام الأكبر والبابا فرانسيس في 2019 بعد توقيع وثيقة الأخوة الإنسانية. وهذا يؤكد عظمة هذه الجائزة ومستقبلها في تحقيق السلام إن شاء الله. الأصدقاء الأعزاء، إن اعتماد الأمم المتحدة 4 فبراير ذكرى توقيع وثيقة الأخوة الإنسانية يوما دوليا للاحتفاء بهذه الوثيقة التاريخية، يعني أن تطبيق الوثيقة التي وقعها الإمام والبابا أصبح يمثل مسؤولية عالمية، وهو إنجاز هام وجديد، خاصة أنه يفتح الباب للتعاون بين كل الدول والمؤسسات من أجل تحقيق تلك المبادئ السامية. وهنا لابد أن نذكر بكل التقدير والاعتزاز الجهود التي بذلت من أجل إحراز هذا المنجز التاريخي. فلأول مرة في التاريخ يحدث أن توافق الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة بإجماع آرائها وإجماع أعضائها على تخليد وثيقة إنسانية كتبت للإنسانية بغض النظر عن اختلافات الدين والعرق. وجه الشكر لبعثة دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة بقيادة السفيرة المتميزة لانا نسيبة، المندوب الدائم لدولة الإمارات وفريقها المتميز الذي أعرف عن قرب حجم المجهود الكبير الذي بذله في إحراز هذا الهدف. والشكر موصول أيضا إلى سعادة السفير العزيز محمد إدريس الذي عبر عن الدبلوماسية المصرية العريقة في دعم هذا الملف وهذا القرار الإنساني. وأيضا الشكر موصول إلى بعثة المملكة العربية السعودية ومملكة البحرين والمملكة المغربية وجميع الدول التي انضمت لهذا القرار. الإخوة والأصدقاء، إن اللجنة العليا للأخوة الإنسانية حرصت خلال الفترة الماضية على تعزيز التعاون مع المؤسسات والمنظمات الدولية والإقليمية لإطلاق مبادرات طموحة لتطبيق وثيقة الأخوة الإنسانية في التعليم والثقافة. وقد وجدت اللجنة تفاعلا واستجابة كبيرة من مختلف الفاعلين الدوليين، وهذا يؤكد أن الأخوة الإنسانية باتت أمل العالم في مواجهة الكثير من مشكلاته وأزماته. الحقيقة أنه يعني أنا لي الشرف أن أحضر معكم هذا الاجتماع، وأقول أنه هذه المجموعة المتواجدة الآن في هذا الحدث تستطيع فعلا أن تحقق شيء ملموس من أجل هذه الإنسانية الجريحة الآن. نحن نمر بظروف صعبة يمر بها العالم كله في مواجهة هذا الوباء الخطير، وعلينا التكاتف. وكنت منذ قليل وهذا شرفني أيضا أتحدث في مؤتمر هام لمنظمة أديان من أجل السلام، وكان يركز تركيزا كبيرا على كيفية استثمار هذه اللحظة التاريخية. هذه اللحظة هي حقا تاريخية، هذه أول مرة في التاريخ منذ وثيقة المدينة التي وقعها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم محمد نبي الإسلام نجد رمزين عظيمين اتفقا على مجموعة من المبادئ لم يختلفا فيها. أنا كان لي الشرف أن أكون متابعا لهذه الجهود منذ اليوم الأول. استمر البابا والإمام عاما يعملون على هذه الوثيقة وعلى صياغة مبادئها، لم يختلفوا قط، لأنه كان المحور الأساسي الذي يجمعهم هو الإنسان بغض النظر عن أي اختلاف، وأيا كان هذا الاختلاف فلا يمكن أن يؤثر على أخوتنا وصداقتنا. الحقيقة البابا والإمام يعني كما سمعت من العديد من قادة الساسة حول العالم فعلوا ما عليهم، قدموا للإنسانية النموذج، قاموا بالدور الذي ينبغي أن يقوم به قادة الأديان. وعلينا نحن المؤسسات والمنظمات أن نقوم بدورنا في تفعيل هذه الوثيقة. وهنا لابد أن أذكر، ليس مجاملة فلست من عادتي المجاملة، هذا الدور المهم الذي يقوم به راعي وثيقة الأخوة الإنسانية صاحب السمو الشيخ محمد بن زايد آل نهيان. فأنا أعرف عن قرب كيفما يبذل من جهد مخلص لتفعيل أهداف هذه الوثيقة دون أي توجه أو أيديولوجية أو أجندة. هذه اللجنة التي قامت باختيار الفائز بجائزة زايد للأخوة الإنسانية لجنة دولية مستقلة استقلالا كاملا. لم يعلم أحد بقرار لجنة التحكيم باختيار السيد غوتيريش والسيدة لطيفة قبل أن يعلم السيد غوتيريش والسيدة لطيفة بأنهم اختيرا لهذه الجائزة. وهذا يدل على أن فعلا هذه الجائزة جائزة عالمية بامتياز، محققة وهادفة للأخوة الإنسانية. شكرا جزيلا الصديقة نهال، شكرا للأخ العزيز موراتينيوس على إتاحة هذه الفرصة، وشكرا على صداقتك وعلى شراكتك معنا من أجل الأخوة الإنسانية. فأنا أعلم أنك حريص كل الحرص على تحقيق مبادئ وأهداف هذه الوثيقة، وكل قلب مفتوح ويد مفتوحة للتعاون معك في المستقبل ومعكم جميعا. شكرا جزيلا.
His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres and my dear friend, the United Nations Secretary General. His Excellency Mr. Miguel Moratinos, the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilization, Her Excellency Ambassador Lana Zaki Nusayba, the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations, His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Fathi Idris, the permanent representative of Egypt to the United Nations, ladies and gentlemen, allow me at the beginning to thank you for organizing such a very important event. I would like to express my heartfelt congratulations to His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, for his winning the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity 2021, jointly with Mother Latifa Ibn Ziyatan. It is indeed a well-deserved recognition for his humanitarian efforts in realizing world peace and fraternity, and for his initiatives that have saved many innocent lives that could have been lost in wars and conflicts. These efforts constituted a timely positive response to the lofty principles enshrined in the Human Fraternity document. And he, by being awarded this prize, is the first to be awarded it after the first two honorees, His Excellency, His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and His Holiness Pope Francis in its first round. Dear friends, the United Nations proclamation of February 4th, which marks the anniversary of signing the Human Fraternity document as the International Day of Human Fraternity, means that the implementation of such historic document signed by His Holiness Pope Francis, Pope of the Catholic Church, and His Eminence the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Professor Ahmed al-Tayyib, has become a global responsibility. For the first time, the United Nations General Assembly has approved unanimously a resolution aimed solely for the betterment of humanity. It is a very important achievement because it opens doors for genuine cooperation among all countries and institutions to achieve these lofty principles. Here we should remember with deep appreciation and gratitude the efforts put to reach such a historic achievement by His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, who supported this proposal from the first moment. I would like also to offer my deep thanks to the United Arab Emirates mission led by Her Excellency Ambassador Lana Zaki Nusayba, the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates to the United Nations, and her distinguished team for exerting strenuous efforts and paying attention to the finest detail to realize this important achievement. My heartfelt thanks also go to His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Fathi Idris, who led the Egyptian diplomatic efforts at the United Nations towards the adoption of such a humanistic resolution. My thanks also go to the permanent missions of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the Kingdom of Morocco to the United Nations for their supporting efforts. My brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, over the last period, the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity has been keen to strengthen cooperation with international and regional institutions and organizations to launch ambitious initiatives for implementing the Human Fraternity document in the fields of education and culture. The committee has found great interaction and response from various international actors. This confirms the human fraternity has become the world's hope in the face of many problems and crises. Therefore, we are determined that our efforts will be in line with the greater hopes and expectations attached to human fraternity. Finally, let this day of every year be an opportunity to consolidate our efforts and share our visions for the good of the entire humanity. I am honored to participate in this meeting. I'm sure that this group will work together very hard for the betterment of all humanity. I was participating in a very important event very recently organized by Religions for Peace organization, which focused on how to promote human fraternity worldwide. This idea of cooperation has been stressed and emphasized in the covenant of Medina that was established by the Prophet of Islam. On the same path and following the same steps, I have been witnessing the same act and the same efforts aimed to human fraternity by His Holiness Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. I would like here to express my deep and sincere appreciation and gratitude to His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi and the patron of Human Fraternity document, for his limitless support and generous patronage of this initiative and this humanitarian work. I'd like also to stress that the judging committee of this award has taken its decision very independently and with full freedom. No one has known about the final decision before His Excellency, my dear friend, Mr. Antonio Guterres and Madame Latifa Ibn Ziyatin. I'd like to thank you, my dear friend Nihal, and I'd like also to thank my dear friend, the Secretary General of the United Nations, and I welcome cooperating with him in the near future for the betterment of all humanity and for promoting human fraternity in every part in the world. Thank you very much.
We thank very much Judge Mohammed Abdulsalam. Thank you very much for your beautiful address, and congratulations on the celebrations that you have today to mark the International Day of Human Fraternity. And earlier today, two inspirational religious figures delivered inspirational words to the world through or during the celebrations of the Human Fraternity Day, which was held in the United Arab Emirates, in the United Arab Emirates actually this morning, New York time. I invite you to watch the speeches which were delivered by His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib, and His Holiness Pope Francis during those celebrations. Let's take a watch.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إخوتنا في الإنسانية في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته، وبعد، فإن احتفالنا اليوم بوثيقتكم، وثيقة الأخوة الإنسانية، له احتفاء بحدث عالمي تاريخي ولد منذ عامين اثنين ليبشر ببدء رسالة سلام يحملها عقلاء العالم إلى البشرية جمعاء، تدعو للتآخي والتعاون ووقف الحروب ونشر التسامح والوئام ونبذ التعصب والكراهية وسياسات القوة والاستعلاء. واسمحوا لي في البداية أن أوجه تحية ممزوجة بالاحترام والإكبار لأخي الفاضل البابا فرانسيس، بابا الكنيسة الكاثوليكية، والصديق الدائم والشجاع على درب الأخوة والسلام، وأشكره على رسالته العامة كلنا إخوة، والتي مثلت معلما بارزا على هذا الطريق. وإني لا يحدوني الأمل في أن يمثل يوم 4 فبراير من كل عام يمثل جرس إنذار وتنبيه يوقظ العالم وينبه قادته ويلفت أنظارهم إلى ضرورة ترسيخ مبادئ الأخوة الإنسانية. ولا يخامرنا أدنى شك في أن هذه الوثيقة تحتاج لتحقيقها وتنزيلها على واقع الناس إلى إرادة صادقة وعزيمة صلبة وإيمان راسخ بأن الناس جميعهم إخوة، ومن حقهم أن يعيشوا في سلام وأمان، وأن ما بينهم من اختلاف وتنوع إنما هو سنة الله في خلقه وعباده. وإني لملتزم إن شاء الله فيما تبقى لي من حياة في هذه الدنيا بمواصلة العمل مع أخي البابا فرانسيس ومع إخوتي علماء الأديان ورموزها، بل مع كل محب الخير والسلام، لأن نجعل من مبادئ الأخوة الإنسانية وأهدافها واقعا ملموسا يعيشه الكبير والصغير في العالم أجمع. واليوم أيها الإخوة في كل مكان تأتي جائزة زايد للأخوة الإنسانية كمبادرة عالمية من أجل تحقيق أهداف هذه الوثيقة. وبهذه المناسبة أود أن أعبر عن تقديري البالغ للأخ الكريم الشيخ محمد بن زايد، الذي يواصل مسيرة والده الخيرة على رعايته لهذه الوثيقة. وأخيرا أحيي أبنائي وإخوتي أعضاء اللجنة العليا للأخوة الإنسانية الذين يواصلون الليل بالنهار في العمل من أجل تطبيق أهداف تلك الوثيقة السامية، وكلي أمل في أن يكونوا دائما وبمشيئة الله تعالى بارقة أمل ومصدر إلهام دائم لكل من يسير في هذا الطريق الصعب، مع تقديم وافر شكري وتقديري لكل من يدعمهم وييسر مهمتهم من أجل خدمة الإنسانية ورقيها. شكرا لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Hermanas y hermanos, esa es la palabra, hermanas y hermanos, afirmar la fraternidad. En modo especial a usted, mi hermano, mi amigo, mi compañero de desafíos y de riesgos en la lucha por la fraternidad, el gran imán Amir el Zayed, a quien le agradezco la compañía en el camino por la reflexión y la redacción de este documento que fue presentado hace 2 años. Su testimonio me ayudó mucho porque fue un testimonio valiente. Yo sé que no era una tarea fácil, pero con usted pudimos hacerla juntos y ayudarnos mutuamente. Y lo más lindo de todo, que ese primer deseo de fraternidad se fue consolidando en verdadera fraternidad. Gracias, hermano, gracias. También quiero agradecer a Su Alteza, el Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, por todos los esfuerzos que ha puesto para lograr seguir adelante en este camino. Creyó en el proyecto, creyó. Y también creo que es justo agradecer, y me permite usted, señor juez, la palabra, al enfant terrible de todo este proyecto, el juez Abdel Absalam, amigo, trabajador, lleno de ideas, que nos ayudó a seguir adelante. Gracias a todos por apostar por la fraternidad, porque hoy la fraternidad es la nueva frontera de la humanidad. O somos hermanos o nos destruimos mutuamente. Hoy no hay tiempo para la indiferencia. No nos podemos lavar las manos con la distancia, con la prescindencia, con el menosprecio. O somos hermanos, permítanme, o se viene todo abajo. Es la frontera sobre la cual tenemos que construir. Es el desafío de nuestro siglo. Es el desafío de nuestros tiempos. Fraternidad quiere decir mano tendida. Fraternidad quiere decir respeto. Fraternidad quiere decir escuchar con el corazón abierto. Fraternidad quiere decir firmeza en las propias convicciones, porque no hay verdadera fraternidad si se negocian las propias convicciones. Somos hermanos, nacidos de un mismo padre, con culturas y tradiciones diferentes, pero todos hermanos. Y respetando nuestras culturas y tradiciones diferentes, nuestras ciudadanías diferentes, hay que construir esta fraternidad, no negociándola. Es el momento de la escucha, es el momento de la aceptación sincera, es el momento de la certeza que un mundo sin hermanos es un mundo de enemigos. Quiero subrayar esto. No podemos decir o hermanos o no hermanos. digamos más bien o hermanos o enemigos. Porque la prescindencia es una forma muy sutil de la enemistad. No solo hace falta una guerra para ser enemigo, basta con prescindir, basta con esa técnica, se ha transformado en técnica, esa actitud de mirar para otra parte prescindiendo del otro, como si no existiera. Querido hermano Gran Imán, gracias por su ayuda, gracias por su testimonio, gracias por este camino que hemos hecho juntos.
Well, there are no words to add to these genuine and sincere words. Thank you to His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. This brings us to the end of the opening segment, and I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers for their inspiring words. I would like now to move to the next segment of this program dedicated to interventions by member states and religious leaders and faith actors. We have received many requests and we are running out of time, so I would kindly request you to limit your interventions to 3 minutes. In the spirit of fraternity and the Interfaith Harmony Week, we merged member states and religious leaders together in our speaking list. So our first speaker in this segment is His Excellency, the Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Ambassador Abdullah Al-Muallim. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Nihal. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum. We meet today to celebrate for the first time the International Day of Human Fraternity, the fraternity that the world needs more than ever before. In a world torn apart by conflict, divided by hate speech, threatened by the spread of pandemics and diseases, and beset by the forces of evil and extremism, robbing it of its security and safety. We are pleased that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia took part in putting forward the General Assembly resolution that approved the celebration of the International Day of Human Fraternity alongside our brothers in the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and other sponsoring countries. Ladies and gentlemen, human fraternity is the close relationship that binds people and societies to each other, based on a number of principles and values, including the principle of mutual respect, the principle of coexistence and acceptance of others, and the principle of justice, equality, and preserving human dignity. We must realize that differences and diversities between nations and peoples in their beliefs and cultures constitute a treasure that distinguishes human beings and societies. What makes us live together and accept our differences and diversities are the bonds of human fraternity, which encourage us to promote a culture of tolerance and build bridges of peace and fraternity, regardless of belief and religion, skin color and language, or race and gender. Ladies and gentlemen, we must also recognize that conflicts and wars are a source of humanity's misery for the indescribable agony they visit on mankind. The conflicts we witness today, the escalation of hate speech, the growing ideologies of violence and extremism, escalating acts of provocation, terrorist attacks targeting sacred and religious sites, the killing of innocent people and defamation of religious symbols are serious factors that require a serious and sincere stand by the international community to confront them and address their causes. While spreading the values of tolerance and acceptance of others is the best way to confront hate narratives and intolerance, promoting a culture of peace and building bridges of love and fraternity are the optimal pathway to tackle extremism, violence, and incitement. We should acknowledge that belief in religious and cultural diversity within societies does not justify clashes at all, but calls for strengthening civilized partnership among peoples and nations. Ladies and gentlemen, in its international relations, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has consistently promoted pluralism and multilateralism. We continuously seek to reinforce the principles of mutual respect in our international relations based on the non-interference in the internal affairs of states. Such an approach is derived from its position as a leader in the Islamic world and is inspired by the tenets of Islam, which call for spreading the values of peace and tolerance. This is what the Messenger of Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, emphasized in his noble hadith. Neither nurse mutual hatred, nor jealousy, nor enmity, and become as fellow brothers and servants of Allah. It is not lawful for a man to keep his relations estranged with his brother beyond 3 days. The basic principles on which the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia international relations policy is also part of its obligations as stipulated in the UN Charter and is aimed to advance the 3 pillars of the United Nations, namely sustainable development, peace and security, and human rights. The Kingdom's efforts in strengthening the bonds of human fraternity and promoting a culture of peace are evident in the range of internal and external initiatives. These initiatives are employed to confront the rising ideologies of extremism and terrorism and to counter hate speech. The establishment of the King Abdullah Center for Interfaith Dialogue, as well as the United Nations Center for Counterterrorism, are examples of the vital role the Kingdom is playing through its partnership with the United Nations, including our partnership with the Office for the Alliance of Civilizations, which was enhanced by the establishment of Atidal Center against extremist ideology. The Kingdom also hosted and sponsored the Islamic World League Conference held in Mecca in May 2019, with more than 1,200 religious scholars attending. This conference issued the Mecca Declaration, which included 29 items calling for the repudiation of violence, promoting peace and tolerance, empowering women and youth, and cementing human bonds. I invite everyone to read this declaration and the vaunted goals it encompasses that call for existence and acceptance of the others. In conclusion, we must stress the importance of occasionally reminding the world of the principle of human fraternity that binds us all, and turning our differences and diversity into a distinct source of strength instead of weakness. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency, the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ambassador Abdullah al-Muallimi, for his words, and we thank him for his support of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, particularly in the area of interfaith dialogue and combating hate speech and violent extremism conducive to terrorism. I now invite His Excellency Ambassador Omar, the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco, the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Nihad. At the outset, I would like to thank the United Nations Alliance of Civilization for organizing this event in partnership with the Permanent Mission of the United Arab Emirates and Egypt to the United Nations, and for the great initiative of the adoption of the Resolution 75/200, which proclaimed the International Day of Fraternity, which Morocco strongly supported. I take this opportunity to underline the contribution and effort made by the Alliance of Civilization under the leadership of His Excellency Mr. Miguel Moratinos for the promotion of intercultural dialogue and strengthening of understanding and respect between civilizations, cultures, religions, and beliefs. The celebration of the first International Day of Human Fraternity today provides an opportunity to further promote culture of peace, tolerance, inclusion, understanding, and solidarity. The culture of peace is based on promotion of understanding and constructive and respectful dialogue between states, societies, and individuals. It embodies the three pillars that guide the action of the United Nations, namely development, peace and security, and human rights. Allow me in this regard to reiterate Morocco's unwavering commitment to the promotion of culture of peace, coexistence, and mutual understanding worldwide. In fact, Morocco fully recognizes the valuable contribution of people of all religions, beliefs, and cultures in enriching the common values shared by all humankind. My country works tirelessly for the reinforcement of the values of peace, harmony, knowledge, and respect for cultural and religious diversity at the national, regional, and international levels, under the high guidance of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI. At the invitation of His Majesty King Mohammed VI, Commander of the Faithful, His Holiness Pope Francis visited Morocco on March 2019. This was the second visit after that of Pope John Paul II in 1985, and it was a strong and eloquent testimony to the leading role played by Morocco in promoting dialogue, understanding, and cooperation between different religions and cultures. Celebration of today is an opportunity to highlight the indispensable role of education in climating discrimination based on religious or belief, combating all types of hatred, and fighting hatred speech that were exacerbated due to the unprecedented crisis caused by the COVID-19. This pandemic requires today more than ever a global response based on unity, solidarity, and renewal multilateral cooperation. Morocco is proud to have an ancestral tradition of promoting intercultural, interreligious, and inter-civilizational dialogue, being a crossroad of meetings and mixing of different cultures and civilization. Respect of culture and religions, diversity is an integral part of daily life and the collective conscience of Morocco society. This is why the Kingdom of Morocco attaches great importance to the fight against all forms of racism, discrimination, xenophobia, hate speech, and the rejection of others, including Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and Christianophobia. The grant of Zayed Award of Human Fraternity yesterday for the Moroccan lady Latifa bin Zayed, along with the Secretary General, is another eloquent illustration of the commitment of all Moroccans, wherever they are, to fraternity and living together. Furthermore, religious leaders have an important role to play in addressing the challenges posed by COVID-19 pandemic. The Kingdom of Morocco, in support of the Secretary General's appeals on this issue, organized in May 2020 the high-level video conference on the role of religious leaders in addressing the multiple challenges of COVID-19. This high-level meeting highlighted the valuable role that religious leaders can play in overcoming this pandemic and tackling all kinds of discrimination, stigma, or misinformation in this regard. In this context, we prize the effort and initiatives aimed at promoting interreligious and intercultural dialogue, including the meeting between His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed Taibi, on 4th of February 2019 in Abu Dhabi, that resulted in the signing of the document on Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together. This document is a model for interfaith harmony and human solidarity, as said Mr. Guterres this morning. And it will remain as a historical and pivotal achievement to enhance human fraternity and to build a better living with harmony and mutual respect. I thank you very much.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Omar Hilal, the permanent representative of the Kingdom of Morocco to the United Nations. We thank you very much for your remarks. The next 5 speakers are going to be in this order. Rabbi Bruce Lustig, followed by Her Excellency Anna Enstrom, and followed by His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel, and then His Eminence Gabriel Cassia, and His Virtue Professor Dr. Allah Shakur Pashazada. So I invite now His Eminence Rabbi Bruce Lustig, the senior Rabbi, Washington Hebrew Congregation, and member of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity. I invite you to the floor, sir. Ambassador Lustig, Rabbi Lustig. Can you hear me?
I'm honored to participate. Thank you so much. In my tradition, we have a saying, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh. All of Israel, all of humanity is responsible one for another. Encoded in every aspect of the document of human fraternity is the central value we are part of one human family, inextricably tied to each other for the common good. Color or creed or country should not perpetuate fear or hatred or bigotry, which results in the polarization of our human family and seeks to divide us. Peace and justice will come when we embrace our common humanity and treat each other with dignity, demanded by the sacred understanding that we're all created in the image of God. The rabbis of the Talmud teach all of humanity was created from Adam for the sake of peace among humankind, so that no one should say to another, his fellow, my ancestor was greater than yours. Imagine on this day if we suddenly lived in a world where all of humanity understood that we were all created in the divine image. How might we behave so very differently? There would be dignity in our difference. Race and gender and faith would not divide us, but would be celebrated. Bigotry and hatred would give way to tolerance, and benevolence would supplant the malevolence of xenophobia. We would not shun, put down, despise, exclude, denigrate, belittle, malign the other, but rather the other, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Sikh, Buddhist, Baha'i, Zoroastrian, would become our brother, our sister. The power, the truth of Genesis is that we are indeed created in the image of God, in the likeness of God, and so we can discern. We have free will. We are not helpless victims of fear or bigotry, but rather masters of our own destiny. We can choose how we see others. We can choose how we treat others. We can stand up to the when the sacred is violated, when fear or faith is used to teach hatred. The wisdom of the United Nations to declare February 4th as the International Day of Human Fraternity gives us the opportunity to build bridges between us rather than barriers that continue to divide us. It is my great hope that the world will celebrate the International Day of Human Fraternity by doing acts of loving kindness to our fellow members of the human family. It is an opportunity to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to do simple acts of loving kindness for our neighbors. Imagine how our world could be so very different if we lived the age-old adage, love thy neighbor as thyself. Then and only then will peace and prosperity come. May this International Day of Human Fraternity be such a beginning to a new world, a new age of harmony and hope. What act of kindness will you do this February 4th? Will you help change the world and build a better world? I appreciate the UN's creating such an opportunity for the world to give us the opportunity to love, to give us the opportunity to build a better world for our children and our children's children. I thank you for this opportunity.
We thank you very much, Rabbi Bruce Lustig, Senior Rabbi, Washington Hebrew Congregation, and a member of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity. Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Her Excellency Ambassador Anna Enstrom, a permanent mission of the permanent representative of Sweden to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nihal, and let me thank the organizers of this meeting for bringing us together as we are celebrating this first day of the International Day of Human Fraternity. Sweden values very much its established engagement with religious actors. It aims to promote a global culture based on dialogue, human rights, equality, peaceful coexistence, and freedom of religion and belief. Let me mention 3 concrete strands. First, the Swedish Dialogue Institute has since 1998 served as a platform for contacts and dialogue between Sweden and the Middle East and North Africa, as well as actors within the region. The institute is temporarily located in Stockholm, but will relocate to Amman in the coming year. At the moment, the institute is holding web-based activities, such as the workshop held for young peace builders from the region last month. Secondly, Sweden supports the successful religious track of the Cyprus peace process. In November 2020, the religious track organized a webinar on violence against women and girls, freedom of religion and belief, and gender equality, together with the OSCE. Thirdly, we have all a collective responsibility to combat extremism, intolerance, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and discrimination in any other faith in our own society and globally. Sweden is therefore proud to organize the Malmö International Forum on Holocaust, remembering and combating anti-Semitism later this year. We have an obligation to ensure that future generations understand the causes of the Holocaust and reflect on its consequences. Education and reflections about the atrocities of the Holocaust is an important part in building tolerance, democracy, and respect for human rights in our societies of today. In closing, I would, like others, like to emphasize Sweden's support to the Alliance of Civilizations and commend the work of our friend Miguel Moratinos. We value very much the role as a soft political power tool for preventive diplomacy and its dialogue with political, traditional, and religious leaders. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Anna Emstrom, the permanent representative of Sweden to the United Nations. Thank you very much for your support to the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. And now I would give the floor to our next speaker on the list, His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel of France, and he is also the chairperson of CAICID Board of Directors. He is representing CAICID as His Excellency, the Secretary General of CAICID, Faisal bin Muammer, was not able to join us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nihal. Honorable participants, Your Excellencies, it's a pleasure to be here today with you as the chair of the board of directors and also as the Metropolitan of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. I represent the intergovernmental organization whose mission, talking about CAICID, in facilitating interreligious and intercultural dialogue globally, was born from the same aspirations that underpin this, the first International Day of Human Fraternity proclaimed by the United Nations in the context of World Interfaith Harmony Week. I acknowledge with gratitude the support for this initiative by His Excellency Miguel Moratinos, the High Representative of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, an organization committed to interreligious and intercultural dialogue and a long-standing partner of CAICID in service to these ideals. I also commend the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, who played their part in as key architects of the historic visit by His Holiness Pope to the United Arab Emirates and the resulting document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, a statement of common purpose consigned by the Pope and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. The Abu Dhabi Declaration, as this document is known, and the process leading to it was almost present in its anticipation of the global COVID-19 crisis, which has deepened pre-existing religious fault lines and the self-destructive human inclination towards dividing communities and groups according to religious, culture, national, and political identity factors. The Abu Dhabi Declaration recognizes the fundamental dignity of the human person and calls on us all to unite around core interfaith principles that ultimately serve this. I'm drawn to two particular phenomena espoused initially by the early church and deeply embedded with the understanding and observance of our Christian faith. The first is derived from the Greek word kenosis, or self-emptying of personal status and submission to God's will. The second is agape, the highest form of unconditional love, God's love for us, ours for God, and the demand this entails that we love each other. These values, which are shared by all faiths, might appear to be rather abstract in some policy or so secular circles, but they call on religious leaders and their adherents to look beyond the uncertainties of their own theological and pastoral traditions and to build bridges to one another to pursuit of the values demanded by our celebration and recognition today of International Day of Human Fraternity. For most of the planet, everyday life and perception is experienced through the filter of one belief system or another, and religion thus can serve as a pathway to social cohesion, to social development, to good governance, to a sense of shared morality. Religious leaders have a duty to unite themselves and those over whom they have pastoral oversight in common human endeavor of the kind demanded by the Abu Dhabi Declaration. I would conclude by saying that the World Interfaith Harmony Week initiative and the International Day of Human Fraternity initiative, conceived and instituted by governments, policymakers, and religious leaders, serves as a recognition of the growing and vital relation between believers and their leaders with the world of policy in pursuit of just and appropriate human development plan. World Interfaith Harmony Week, an International Day of Human Fraternity, elevated to global status by UN proclamation, a recognition of religious values as avenues to a policy of just and fair human development. We, in the religious world, must in turn unite to better engage with this ideal. Thank you very much.
We would like to thank His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel, the Metropolitan of France and Chairperson of the CAICID Board of Directors, for his intervention. I would just like to remind our distinguished guests to limit their remarks to 3 minutes, as we are still having a very long list of speakers. I now invite His Excellency Gabriel Cacha, the Permanent Observer Mission of the Permanent Observer, I beg your pardon, of the Permanent Observer Mission of the Holy See to the United Nations to the floor.
Thank you, Nihal. I would like to begin by thanking the permanent missions of Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, the Higher Committee for Human Fraternity, and the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations for sponsoring this event, marking the first annual observance of the International Day of Human Fraternity. The General Assembly chose February the 1st as the International Day of Human Fraternity because of its association with the date of the meeting between Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayyib, which took place 2 years ago today in Abu Dhabi, which happily coincided with the World Interfaith Harmony Week. That meeting resulted in the signing of the landmark document entitled Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together, inviting people of faith and all those of goodwill to work together to advance a culture of mutual respect, fraternity, reconciliation, dialogue, and collaboration for peace. It was particularly heartening to witness the two main protagonists take part in a virtual commemoration early this morning, at which the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, also delivered remarks, and who, along with Mrs. Latifa Ibn Ziyatin, was the recipient of the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity. The document itself contains a special summons for believers of different religions to show, in the face of violence, the importance of the life of faith and the positive role people of faith play in society. A crucial requirement for the contribution of believers in society remains that they can profess their faith freely and practice their religious beliefs according to their conscience and without any pressure or constraint. Pope Francis elaborated on this call for dialogue and reconciliation among people of different religions in his recent encyclical, Fratelli Tutti. The Holy Father stated that the authentic social dialogue involves the ability to respect the other's point of view and to admit that it may include legitimate convictions and concerns, and is based on the pursuit of truth and not just a feverish exchange of opinions. As the Pontiff reminded us early today, there cannot be true fraternity by negotiating one's true convictions. The COVID-19 pandemic has underscored the need for such authentic social dialogue as we strive to meet together the challenges of today and tomorrow. Pope Francis has just stressed the importance of fraternity and the need to stand up for it, envisioning true fraternity as the new frontier for humanity, the great challenge of our time. May today's virtual gathering and celebration help us advance along this pathway to a future of greater solidarity, reconciliation, and peace, as all of us, believers and non-believers alike, bear witness to our belonging to the one human family, the very reason and founding principle also of the United Nations organizations. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Archbishop Gabriel Cacha, the permanent observer of the Permanent Observer Mission of the Holy See to the United Nations. And now I give the floor to His Virtue, Professor Dr. Allah Shakur Pachazadeh, Sheikh al-Islam of the Caucasus and member of the Board of Directors. The floor is yours.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Muhterem tedbir iktisatçıları, Azerbaycan Kafkas Müslümanları adından DMT'nin baş asambleyasının təsis ettiği Dinlerarası Harmoniya Həftəsində hamınızı salamlamaqdan şərəf duyuram.
Dear participants in the event, it's a great honor for me to extend warmest greetings on behalf of Muslims of Azerbaijan and the Caucasus to you all at the Interfaith Harmony Week proclaimed by the UN General Assembly. We highly appreciate the valuable address extended to us today by UN Secretary General Mr. Antonio Guterres. I would like to express my gratitude to all organizers, including High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, Miguel Moratinos, for the invitation to the Road to the Future event, which is dedicated to International Humanitarian Day. UN agencies proclaiming together with religious organizations messages of interfaith harmony and goodwill on a global scale, and promoting these commitments with equal efforts are a necessity and an act which is pleasing to our one Almighty Creator. We welcome the UN's decisions to mark 4th February as International Day of Human Fraternity, and we view as historic the signing in Abu Dhabi of the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together by His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence Sheikh of Al-Azhar, Ahmad al-Tayyib. We promote ideas stipulated in this document through our activities, and we are directly involved in the implementation of these values. The inclusion of a special clause in the final document of the second summit of world religious leaders which we held in Baku in 2019, is an expression of this goal. Almighty God says in the Quran, "Without doubt, believers are brothers. Make peace between brothers." Dear participants, in addition to the COVID calamity, hate speech is one more problem faces mankind at present. Hate speech is the cause of all bloody conflicts and mass crimes. It calls for killings and incites racism, xenophobia, and discrimination. And it's one of the big sins before the Almighty Creator. As a religious leader, for the sake of the salvation of human life, which is the most precious thing created by Almighty God, I call on us to join efforts to fight together against hate speech, which gives rise to wars and conflicts. In this regard, the efforts of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations toward universal peace and mutual understanding are important. Taking this opportunity, I am honored to pass regards from Azerbaijani President, His Excellency Mr. Ilham Aliyev, to all participants in the event, in particular the head of the alliance, Mr. Moratinos. At present, the Azerbaijani state is determined to eliminate the bitter consequences of the occupation of our Karabakh lands, restore and destroy religious and cultural monuments there, and revive the historical, cultural, and spiritual heritage of universal significance. The Azerbaijani state is an active initiator of and participant in the process of dialogue between religions and civilizations. The exemplary tradition of mutual trust and respect among all faith-based groups in Azerbaijan allows us to closely and efficiently participate in activities in this regard on a global scale.
Faaliyetinde her zaman dinler arası diyalog ve emektaşlık, konfesiyalar arası anlaşma istikametinde ardıcıl say gösteren dini merkez, Kafkas Müslümanları İdaresi olarak BMT Təhlükəsizlik, BMT Sivilizasiyalar Alyansının layihə ve teşebbüslerinin reallaşmasına tövbe vermeye hazırız. Uca Yaradanımızdan tedbirimize uğurlar dileyirəm. Amin. Assalamu alaikum ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu.
We, the Caucasus Muslims Board, as a religious center that has always strived in a consistent manner toward interfaith dialogue and cooperation and understanding among faith-based groups, are willing to contribute to the implementation of projects and initiatives of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. I wish great success to our event from our Almighty Creator. Amen.
So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank His Virtue, Professor Dr. Allah Shakur Pashazadeh, Sheikh al-Islam of the Caucasus. And I would like to just announce the next 5 speakers on my list and who are already online. They are going to be in this order: the distinguished representatives of India, Jordan, followed by Religions for Peace, Algeria, and then the State of Palestine. So I would invite now His Excellency, the Permanent Representative of India to the United Nations, Ambassador T.S. Tirimurti, to the floor.
Excellencies, I'm pleased to join you all today at this special event dedicated to the celebration of the first International Day of Human Fraternity. We also express our sincere appreciation to the United Arab Emirates and Egypt for sponsoring and piloting the resolution 75/200, which proclaimed February 4 as the International Day of Human Fraternity. India was happy to co-sponsor this important resolution commemorating the meeting between His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmad Al-Tayyib in Abu Dhabi. As we also commemorate the World Interfaith Harmony Week, this is an opportune moment for us to reflect on the perils of the rise in intolerance, hatred, violence, and terrorism, which we witness in today's world. It is therefore the need of the hour that we as a community of nations deepen our mutual cooperation and understanding to promote human fraternity. Excellencies, the ancient Indian text, the Rig Veda, which goes back into our civilization, has espoused the principle of fraternity when it says, and I quote, "No one is superior or inferior. All are brothers and sisters, and we should strive for the interest of all and progress collectively." The Constitution of India also gives a place of pride to fraternity when it states in the preamble that it is fraternity that assures the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. India's multicultural edifice has been curated by tolerance, mutual respect, and understanding for different religions, cultures, and people of all walks of life. Over centuries, we have given refuge to all nationalities and religions. It is this accommodation and tolerance for all pluralistic traditions that has cultivated the spirit of fraternity in our country. Excellencies, we must ensure that interreligious and inter-civilizational dialogues are inclusive, broad, and encompasses all faiths, not just a select few as it is happening now. We must stand united against the dark forces that speak the language of violence, exclusivism, and terrorism. I conclude by quoting from Mahatma Gandhi. "I want cultures of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible, but I refuse to be blown off my feet by any." I thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank His Excellency Ambassador S. Tirumurti, the permanent representative of India to the United Nations. And I now give the floor to Her Excellency Ambassador Sima Bahous, the permanent representative of Jordan to the United Nations. And of course, it's needless to say that Faith Harmony Week was created and promoted and initiated by Jordan and by His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan in 2010. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nihal. Excellencies, dear friends and colleagues, good morning. It's good afternoon. I would like to first thank the organizers for hosting this event today. In particular, I would like to thank my good friends, the Permanent Ambassador of Egypt, His Excellency Mohammed Idris, and the Permanent Representative of UAE, Her Excellency Lana Nusseibeh, and His Excellency Miguel Moratinos for convening us today. I also would like to thank His Excellency Judge Muhammad Abdel Salam of the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, and of course, my thanks go to His Excellency Antonio Gutierrez. International Day of Human Fraternity, as you have said, Nihal, builds on Jordan's initiative, the World Interfaith Harmony Week, which was proposed by His Majesty King Abdullah II and was formulated in a UN resolution, GA resolution 65/5, and unanimously adopted in 2010. Jordan has proudly also co-sponsored the GA resolution 75/200, proclaiming the 4th of February as the International Day of Human Fraternity, and we celebrate it today with commitment and dedication. Excellencies, Jordan has always been at the forefront of promoting world peace and coexistence. Under the leadership of His Majesty King Abdullah II, Jordan's continuous contributions have spanned over the years, from promoting peaceful coexistence and harmony to dialogue between and among religions, to creating responses to violent extremism, and to creating responses to terrorist ideologies adopted by Daesh and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups that have hijacked Islam and its true peaceful teachings. The efforts have also been targeted towards building partnerships and networks to combat discrimination, racism, xenophobia, and religious bigotry. Through the Aqaba process, Jordan, at the highest world leaders level, is working with different stakeholders, including tech companies, NGOs, and religious leaders to combat violent extremism, terrorism, and to promote coexistence and peace and harmony language online. Today, we are also fully aware of the COVID-19 effects and its repercussions, and the inequalities that it has revealed. We are fully cognizant that poverty, injustice, and inequality bring about conflict and insecurities that threaten world peace. We must continue to work through the multilateral system towards preventing and ending conflicts and towards realizing the SDGs as a means to creating peaceful, fulfilled, prosperous societies that enjoy peace, development, and human rights, the three pillars of the United Nations. Excellencies, since the start of this pandemic, our governments, civil society organizations, businesses, academia, youth movements, the UN, and many other institutions and individuals have initiated response plans to save lives, to maintain human connectivity, and to provide the needed assistance, including mental health support. Religious leaders have been present and engaged in every step of the process, and they should continue. Their role in keeping alive hope and faith is absolutely crucial. Religious leaders are essential to bolster mutual understanding and respect. They help end conflicts. They help lay the ground for long-lasting peace arrangements, facilitate the delivery of humanitarian aid, and support peace and harmony building efforts worldwide. Religious leaders are also a vital player in the COVID-19 response plans in helping to recover and build forward better. They offer support to communities. They help dispel rumors and misinformation, especially these days about the disease and the vaccines. And they help encourage communities to take the proper actions to help us all through the pandemic and its repercussions. Religious leaders' contribution to enhancing community resilience and to strengthening social cohesion is key to helping address our new emerging challenges following the pandemic. At this time, we should also be cognizant of the fact that our youth are suffering most. Religious leaders must continue to encourage youth to have hope and to persevere. Religious leaders and our educators must take advantage, as we all must, of new technologies and the expansion of social media and online learning to reach vulnerable youth, female and male, with content that provides hope and enlightenment. We should continue, all of us, to strengthen multilateralism, cooperation, and solidarity, and to continue to use every avenue we have to build and enhance the resilience of our societies and countries against dark ideologies, violent extremism, xenophobia, stigmatization, stereotyping, hate speech, and radicalization. To conclude, I say, spreading the values of love, peace, and respect of the other will always be key to international peace. Jordan attaches great importance to this goal and will continue our efforts to realize it. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Sima Bahous, the permanent representative of Jordan to the United Nations. And indeed, it is an afternoon. We are already afternoon, so I would like to kindly remind all our distinguished speakers to limit their interventions to 3 minutes because we still have a long list, but we are happy that we are having this high-level participation from religious leaders and also from member states. And I invite His Excellency Ambassador Soufiane Maimouni, the permanent representative of Algeria, to deliver his remarks.
Thank you, moderator. Allow me at the outset to thank and congratulate the permanent mission of Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, together with the UN Alliance of Civilization, for organizing the first celebration of the International Day of Human Fraternity, as proclaimed in the General Assembly Resolution 75/200. The special messages delivered by the Secretary General and the High Representative for the UN Alliance of Civilization today remind us of the importance of the humanistic principle of fraternity, acceptance, and respect of religious and cultural diversity in building a peaceful world and resilient societies. The proclamation of the 4th February as the International Day of Human Fraternity comes at the right moment and contribute to highlight the need to further promote a culture of peace and tolerance among people, religion, and nations. These values need to be upheld to overcome our contemporary challenges. Indeed, our world faces many crises, which are reflected, among others, in the high level of poverty, hunger, the spread of terrorism and conflicts, and the scourge of racism, discrimination, and stigmatization. And now the international community is struggling with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has put to the test our shared human values. This pandemic has revealed deep-rooted inequalities in our societies, giving rise to a new wave of hate speech, religious hatred, stigma, and discrimination. However, this pandemic has also created a new momentum for solidarity, unity, and fraternity among countries and people to recover and rebuild better. It has further shown the need to improve awareness and understanding of the common values shared by all mankind in order to bridge divide and overcome misperceptions and polarizations. In this regard, and bolstered by its history, Algeria has always advocated within the UN for tolerance and respect between religions, cultures, and nations. In fact, from the Christian teaching of Bishop St. Augustine in eastern Algeria to the principle of religious tolerance dictated by the Emir Abdel Qadir in the western Algeria, my country has always been a place of religious dialogue. It is in this context that Algeria presented to the General Assembly Resolution 72/130, celebrating the International Day of Living Together in Peace, which provided a tool of regularly mobilizing the efforts of the international community to promote tolerance, inclusion, understanding, and solidarity. And as we remain guided by these values and strive to promote them at the national level, my government has devoted its effort in implementing policies of reconciliation and religious dialogue, focusing on education and communication, and by working with community, civil society, and other actors in order to build an inclusive and tolerant and peaceful society. Furthermore, Algeria adopted in May 2020 a new law related to the prevention of the fight against discrimination and hate speech, setting up a comprehensive national legal framework to fight these phenomena that are foreign to our society and to the principle of Islam, and in order to protect the Algerian society against these scourges and to promote the principle of tolerance, dialogue, and the respect of cultural diversities. Excellency, we are in a process of building back better and laying down the foundation for sustainable peace and development. We should take this opportunity to highlight the importance of fraternity, dialogue, and solidarity, and advance the culture of peace within the UN alongside those complementary objectives and processes, with the aim to continue our efforts to build resilient societies. Let me reiterate that my delegation will remain engaged to uphold our shared desire to live and act together as friends, brothers, and equals, united in our differences and diversity in order to build a sustainable and harmonious world. And I thank you.
We thank you very much, Your Excellency Soufiane Maimouni, the permanent representative of Algeria to the United Nations. I had announced earlier the Secretary General of Religions for Peace, Dr. Azza Karam, but I do not see her online. So I will move to the next speaker on my list. His Excellency Ambassador Ammar Hijazi. He is Assistant Minister for Multilateral Affairs and the focal point for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the State of Palestine. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Nihal. Excellencies, distinguished religious leaders, as we commemorate World Interfaith Harmony Week and celebrate the first International Day of Human Fraternity, we honor the various accomplishments, initiatives, and actions taken to combat prejudice, stigmatization, and misperceptions. Such determined and persistent efforts will pave the way for fulfilling a world that is founded on solidarity, equality, and non-discrimination. In this regard, the State of Palestine aims towards enhancing dialogue and understanding between people, cultures, and religions in order to create an international environment that is based on peace and tolerance, where human rights and dignity are fully respected, protected, and fulfilled. In Palestine, the cradle of three monotheistic religions, we continue to suffer from the prolonged occupation and its colonialism and systematic denial of rights of the Palestinian people, including the right to self-determination. Thus, our people completely cherish tolerance, equality, and most importantly, peace. Excellencies, as we witness the rise of unilateralism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and other forms of hate and discrimination, we stress that religions must never incite violence, oppression, and extremism. We stand by the realization that the power of all religions relies in its ability to advance a culture of mutual respect. Any manipulation and misinterpretation of religions will inevitably result in blind hatred and hostility, a deviation from all religious beliefs. The inflammatory and dangerous repercussions of such developments can be seen around the world where communities are divided on religious, ethnic, sectarian, and other lines. Most notably, in the context of facing one of the greatest global challenges, including the hard-hitting consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. The rise of these destabilizing ideologies threatens to tear entire communities and nations apart. We must employ extraordinary efforts to confront these rising tides of hate and revive the path of dialogue, understanding, and inclusiveness at all levels. As we endeavor to advance the path of peace, diversity, and tolerance in these critical times, all illegal actions and forms of discrimination, extremism, and intolerance must be explicitly condemned and countered with accountability. The international community has an obligation to honor its commitments under international law and defend the values of promoting a culture of tolerance and respect amongst nations, and combat all regimes, policies, and practices that stand in the way of the assurance of equal rights. In the end, the State of Palestine expresses its full willingness and readiness in enduring and highlighting the principles and values enshrined in the document of human fraternity as a step in the pathway towards the promising future that we all dream of, a future where the world is completely engaged in international cooperation, multilateralism, and solidarity at all levels. Thank you.
We thank His Excellency Ambassador Ammar Hijazi, Assistant Minister for Multilateral Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates of the State of Palestine. And next on my list, we still have eight more speakers. The distinguished representatives and delegates of the OIC, Cuba, Venezuela, Globe Faith Wash Alliance, Philippines, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the World Council of Religious Leaders. I now invite His Excellency Akshin Medayev, the permanent observer of the mission of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to the United Nations, to the floor.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, allow me to express my gratitude on behalf of the OIC for the kind invitation to participate in this year's commemoration of the World Interfaith Harmony Week. Our deep appreciation goes particularly to the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, the permanent missions of the United Arab Emirates and the Arab Republic of Egypt, and also to the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity for organizing this timely and important annual event. Looking at the theme of today's session, the International Day of Human Fraternity, a pathway to the future, the OIC sees it as truly relevant, especially with regard to the current global situation faced by the humanity. For more than a year now, the world has been struggling hard to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. And until today, despite the already availability of the vaccines, we still have less idea when this pandemic will be fully contained. The virus has brought huge impacts to almost every single aspect of our life, threatening the safety of all people, regardless of their race, nation, culture, and religion. It's also the fact that the virus has exacerbated social inequality and vulnerability while triggering new waves of xenophobia, hate-mongering, scapegoating, discrimination, and ethnocultural racism. Facing such an ongoing global crisis, what is required as a response would certainly be complex and multidimensional. OIC firmly believes that what is mostly needed at this critical time are solidarity and unity by working together hand in hand in accordance to our unique capacity. The COVID-19 is a collective concern to all humankind and its entirety, and it should have left us with a very important lesson. To survive on this planet, each of us must cooperate regardless of our religious or cultural backgrounds. Therefore, dialogue must play its utmost importance. Why? Because dialogue emphasizes on inclusion, empowerment, mutual respect, and interpersonal engagement, the elements which are mostly needed to generate intergroup solidarity, cross-cultural and cross-religion cooperation and understanding. And this should be common pathway being done through action by governments, international organizations, civil societies, religious leaders, private sectors, and all members of the international community. Within this context, we see the role of religious leaders as very crucial, since they have the capacity to disseminate knowledge and awareness about the unequivocal necessity of unity and solidarity. Moreover, religious leaders usually have a wide audience among large part of the population while having authority, legitimacy, and support from local communities. Ladies and gentlemen, the OIC has taken several initiatives to deal with these challenging global issues and to fulfill the principles and values enshrined in its charter, which underlines the importance of, I quote, contributing to international peace and security, understanding and dialogue among civilizations, cultures and religions, and the promotion of friendly relations and good neighborhood, mutual respect and cooperation, end of the quote. In this respect, the OIC is committed to international cooperation to promote international interfaith dialogue, harmony, tolerance, peaceful coexistence, and respect for diversity, particularly in these difficult times largely impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Akfin Mediev, the permanent observer of the Permanent Observer Mission of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to the United Nations. I now invite to the floor Her Excellency Ms. Ana Silvia Rodriguez Abascal, Deputy Permanent Representative of Cuba to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Nihal. First, I would like to thank the Alliance of Civilization, and in particular to Mr. Moratinos, for its leadership in the promotion of a culture of peace and tolerance within the complex international situation we are going through. I also thank the mission of Egypt and the United Arab Emirates for their efforts to declare the International Day of Human Fraternity. Commemorating each year a day dedicated to fraternity among human beings will contribute to the implementation of the Declaration and Program of Action on the Culture of Peace. The promotion of peace, peaceful coexistence, tolerance, mutual respect, international cooperation, and solidarity, which are part of the feeling of fraternity, are principles and values that Cuba freely shares. The promotion of a culture of peace and tolerance among the various religions and forms of civilization is vital. There can be neither economic development nor social justice for all without peace and an environment of respect for our legitimate difference. There have been many positive examples in recent years with regard to the promotion of peace, dialogue, and understanding between religions and culture. One of them is the meeting held in Havana in 2016 between the Pope Francis and the Patriarch Kirill. This meeting was the first of its kind in the millennium. However, for there to be peace, the purpose and principle of the UN Charter and international law must be strictly observed, in particular the prohibition of the use of threat of the use of force, non-interfering in internal affairs, respect for sovereignty and self-determination. The removal of unilateral coercive measures, which are contrary to the UN Charter and international law, is also inherent to the purpose of fostering the culture of peace and human fraternity. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the inequalities, inequities, and injustice of the current international order. We have seen with astonishment the lack of solidarity and the advance of unilateralism. It is also alarming that the pandemic is being used to encourage supremacist, racist, and xenophobic ideas, which only spark off division and confrontation between and within countries. Only through international cooperation and dialogue respectful for our differences will be able to move forward together in solving the common problems we are facing, including COVID-19, racial discrimination, religious intolerance, and xenophobia. To this end, it will be indispensable to support platforms that promote peace, dialogue, tolerance, and mutual respect, such as the United Nations Alliance of Civilization and, from this year on, the International Day of Human Fraternity. In this endeavor, you can count with Cuba. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency Ms. Ana Silvia Rodriguez Abascal, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Cuba to the United Nations. I now give the floor to His Excellency Ambassador Joaquin Perez, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Venezuela.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator, and good afternoon, colleagues. In the interest of time, I will read a short version of our statement for today as prepared. As a country convenes of the importance of promoting a culture of peace, dialogue, and cooperation for promoting, among others, peace and international security, sustainable development, and human rights in a world that demands greater solidarity, trust, understanding, and tolerance, and as a co-sponsor of General Assembly Resolution 75/200, Venezuela is pleased to participate in this virtual celebration to commemorate, for the first time ever, the International Day of Human Fraternity. We thank the Alliance of Civilizations and Mr. Moratinos, as well as the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity, the delegations of Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, for organizing this important interactive panel. Madam Moderator, against a backdrop of uncertainty presented by the decade ahead of us in a pandemic and post-pandemic context in the near future, the strengthening and innovation of mechanisms of action to achieve an environment conducive to trust that, in turn, allow us to create a truly inclusive international community in which international solidarity and cooperation prevail without discrimination of any kind becomes a moral and ethical duty for the UN and global society as a whole. It may seem as an unattainable ideal, but there are real signs that a fraternal and humane world is indeed possible. 2020, for example, was truly a year of contrasts. during which the COVID-19 pandemic caught by surprise many of our states and our peoples, claiming millions of lives in a battle that we are still fighting today. In 2021, for its part, we are seeing how the fight for vaccines and effective treatments against the COVID-19 is set to dominate the year in the international arena, with northern countries putting obstacles on southern countries for ensuring their timely and equitable access to those treatments, ignoring the fact that we're only as strong as the weakest link. The unfortunate human crisis resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic should instead encourage us all and force us all to change our mindsets towards a cooperative and resilient approach in which we truly demonstrate that no one will be left behind. Madam Moderator, fragility and resilience in a changing environment seem to be the main futures of the years to come. And for all of us to move forward as humanity in a commensurate manner to the last 75 years since the establishment of the United Nations, it is imperative to raise the quality of our moral and fraternal commitment with humankind, well above differences of truths that do not belong to any particular group. It is about time we recommit ourselves to coexisting peacefully. We need to overcome our selfishness and give joint planning, peace, and coexistence a chance, even in the midst of our differences, for much irreconcilable they may seem. A new, fairer, more inclusive and equitable international order is possible. A new world where the well-being, prosperity, and happiness of our peoples are guaranteed is also possible. Embracing diversity will bring us closer towards that goal. Madam Moderator, the international movement in favor of the culture of peace has made significant achievements in just a few years. We must continue fostering a world of mutual understanding and sustained dialogue, a world that allows us to recognize each other in both our agreements and disagreements, and to respect each other as a means to ensure the ultimate goal of preserving peace. To conclude, Venezuela reaffirms its firm conviction that the Declaration and the Program of Action for a Culture of Peace must be promoted as a state policy, having the most vulnerable at the center of public policies, together with the promotion of diplomacy, dialogue, tolerance, understanding, unity, and cooperation. I thank you very much, Madam Facilitator.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Joaquin Perez, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Venezuela. And I now give the floor to Ms. Sadvi Bhagawati Saraswati, and she is, of course, the Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance. Hello, Sadvi.
It is such an honor and such a privilege to be together at this first International Day of Human Fraternity, a day reminding us of a core truth, a truth that is inextricable from our very existence, the truth of our oneness, our connection, the fact that we are not, despite shallow and superficial appearances, islands in and of ourselves, or of our small factions on the basis of race, religion, color, culture, or creed. COVID has brought this fact home in a way that perhaps no event in history ever has. None of us can be truly safe unless we are all safe. None of us can be truly healthy unless we are all healthy. That safety, that health, that security, which we all need to exist beyond the four walls of our individual homes, beyond our cave of quarantine, is only as strong as the world outside is strong. In Hinduism, we are taught Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is a family. It is said that faith can move mountains, and we need it to move the minds and the behaviors of people back from this vision of the world as a bazaar, a marketplace where we compete and we steal and we grab, back to the vision of a parivard. Parivard means family. So we need to shift that vision from a marketplace, a bazaar, to a family, parivar. Religion should give us the courage to resist that which must be resisted, and the miraculous authority in knowing that in God all things are possible. True religious power is to own our no as much as our yes. We must be willing to say no where no must be said. And today, no must be said to practices that are violating the very principles of care, compassion, and love that our religions are rooted in. Today, no must be said to all of the divisiveness and the oneness that is pulling us apart from each other. Today, no must be said to using our words, our actions to create violence or divisiveness or suffering on any basis. We have the four beautiful eyes of information, inspiration, innovation, and implementation. We have the information. We have the inspiration to change the current situation. And we have, through all of your wonderful offices and the great work that you're doing, the wonderful innovations. And now together, we just need to implement it. In closing, our Global Interfaith WASH Alliance is dedicated to bringing together faith leaders for crucial aspects of peace and development, including water, sanitation, hygiene, women's rights, women's empowerment, and environmental protection, but also bringing them together to remind all of us and to highlight the union of our hands and our hearts. And again, thank you so much for this beautiful opportunity to be together with all of you today. And deep gratitude to UNAOC for this crucial, essential, inspiring, historic work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sadvi Bhagawati Saraswati, Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance, for the inspirational words and for the four eyes. So thank you very much. I move now to our next speaker on the list, His Excellency Ambassador Muhammad Amir Khan, Deputy Permanent Representative of Pakistan. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Excellency Moratinos, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to join hands with the international community to commemorate the first ever International Day of Human Fraternity. We particularly appreciate the lead taken by permanent missions of Egypt and UAE and other core group countries in taking this initiative. We are particularly also happy to note that Pakistan was among co-sponsors that initiated this resolution, which proclaimed 4th February as International Day of Human Fraternity. Mr. Chair, the greatest paradox of our times is that the globalization has brought people closer and increased interdependence. It has also spawned divisions and frictions among and within societies. Horrid discourses fueled by hatred and ideologies of racial and religious supremacy have moved from the fringe to political mainstream. Islamophobia is particularly on the rise. In many places, including in our own region, the COVID-19 has aggravated the clash of cultures and religions, including new waves of violence. It was against this backdrop that the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together was signed 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi between Pope Francis and Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad Al-Tayyib. We believe that the document provides us with a clear blueprint for promoting acceptance and respect of religious and cultural diversity through interreligious and intercultural dialogue. This is essential for creating an environment conducive to building peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. In a way, the values and principles espoused by the document on human fraternity are fully aligned with the goals and objectives of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations. The celebration of the first International Day of Human Fraternity within the setting of World Interfaith Harmony Week provides an opportunity to highlight the principles and values included in the document of human fraternity. On its part, Pakistan remains committed to promoting religious tolerance, understanding, and cooperation at home and abroad. A recent manifestation of this commitment is the opening of Kartarpur Corridor, the world's largest Gurdwara, allowing easy access to our Sikh brothers from neighborhood and all across the world. Let me conclude by reiterating that it is in our enlightened interest to respect each other's religions, avoid denigration of religious symbols and personalities, attacks and desecration of religious sites, and eliminate religious discrimination, and combat incitement to violence, including its contemporary manifestation of Islamophobia. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Deputy Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Munwar Hussain, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Bangladesh.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the missions of Egypt and UAE and the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations for organizing today's event. Bangladesh co-sponsors the resolution proclaiming the International Day of Human Fraternity. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, for his selection as the recipient of the Zayed Award for Human Fraternity. We also congratulate the other recipient, Ms. Latifa Ibn Ziyatan. Excellencies, we are going through a challenging period of unprecedented scale. The COVID-19 has not only upended the global economy, but has had serious social impact everywhere. In the midst of pandemic, regrettably, we see a growing rise in intolerance and social and communal tension. Against this backdrop, the celebration of the International Day of Human Fraternity this year assumes renewed significance. It is a reminder to us of the power of human fraternity that can help us to overcome any challenges that we may face. The document on human fraternity for world peace and living together that was signed by His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar on 4 February 2019, promoting trust and understanding between communities and religions and peoples of the world, gains renewed relevance and urgency this year. Its message of human fraternity is what the world needs today in building trust and friendship, in confronting pandemic challenges related to access to health services, vaccines, decent jobs, livelihoods, all giving rise to grievances and mistrusts. If allowed to fester, this could undermine development gains, peace, and social cohesion. However, past lessons from such crises tells us that inclusion, partnership, and diversity are critical for recovery and resilience. Excellencies, Bangladesh greatly values the principles of tolerance, dialogue, and understanding. The principles of peace, democracy, secularism, and social and religious harmony are constitutional commitments for us. Our founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, in his maiden speech to the UNGA in 1974, had declared that peace is an imperative for the survival of mankind, and that ethos has shaped our peace-centric, tolerant state policy. It was this vision that inspired us to promote the principles of a culture of peace, which is now an important agenda in the United Nations for the last 21 years. Excellencies, with the COVID-19 still around us, we need to recognize, perhaps as never before, the importance of inculcating a culture of peace, tolerance, solidarity, and harmony amongst ourselves. Now more than ever, we need to reinforce social cohesion and peaceful coexistence, mutual respect and understanding to prevent social tensions between individuals and communities. As we seek to build back better, inculcating human fraternity in the minds of people would be the pathway by which we can ensure and honor these principles. We must commit ourselves to do it not only in words, but deeds, not only once a year, but every day. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Omar Hussein, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Bangladesh. We have 3 more speakers on our list, and after which Mr. Miguel Moratinos, the High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, will be concluding this event. So our next speaker is His Excellency Ambassador Jamal Faris Rouai, the Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of Bahrain to the United Nations. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, for giving me the floor. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to the Permanent Mission of the United Arab Emirates and the Arab Republic of Egypt, of course, Ambassador Mohammed Rees and Ambassador Lana Nuseba, as well to the United Nations Alliance of Civilization and Mr. Moratinos, and also to the Higher Committee for the Human Fraternity for hosting today's event. And also I would like to thank the briefers and the previous speaker for their valuable remarks. The landmark adoption of Resolution 75/200, which we proudly were one of the main co-sponsors by consensus in the General Assembly last year, demonstrate the importance of the promoting a culture of peace, interreligious and intercultural dialogue, as well as tolerance and human unity. This day marks the 2-year anniversary of the historic signing of the document on human fraternity for the world peace and living together by the Al-Azhar Grand Imam Dr. Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayyib and His Holiness Pope Francis, which Bahrain has welcomed. Under the guidance and leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, Bahrain has undertaken many initiatives and projects with the aim of fostering a culture of tolerance and peace through the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence, the King Hamad Center for Cyber Peace, the King Hamad Chair of Interfaith Dialogue and Peaceful Coexistence at the Italian University of Sapienza, and also the Declaration of the Kingdom of Bahrain. The Kingdom of Bahrain has also launched the Global Award of Women and Youth Empowerment, Sustainable Development, Information and Communication Technology, Education and Service for Humanity, all of which we contribute to promoting peace and coexistence. Furthermore, at the initiative of Bahrain, the United Nations adopt Resolution 73/329 by consensus, which declare April 5th as the International Day of Conscience. To conclude, the Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates its commitment to promoting a culture of peace, human fraternity, and peaceful coexistence, which would contribute to the maintaining peace and security and achieving sustainable development goals. And I would like to thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Jamal Faris Rouai, the Permanent Representative of Bahrain. We thank you for your remarks and for joining us today. I now give the floor to His Excellency Angelito Nayan, Minister at the Permanent Mission of the Philippines to the United Nations.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. High Representative, Excellencies. The Philippines congratulates the UN Alliance of Civilization for convening today's first International Day of Human Fraternity in partnership with the Permanent Missions of Egypt and United Arab Emirates and the Higher Committee of Human Fraternity to commemorate the World Interfaith Harmony Week and in the context of the United Nations Culture of Peace agenda. We agree that it's more important now more than ever to dedicate our efforts to advancing intercultural and interreligious dialogue as a viable tool to prevent and diffuse identity-based conflicts. Since its establishment 16 years ago, the UNAOC has become a global multi-stakeholder platform for intercultural dialogue, understanding and cooperation, focused on the 4 pillars, namely education, youth, migration, and the media. The Philippines continues its advocacy and work to promote a culture of peace at the national, regional, and multilateral levels. At the national level, in keeping with the commitment of President Duterte to bring just and lasting peace in southern Philippines in a pandemic context, we continue to follow a peace and development roadmap that is inclusive, participatory, conflict, culture, and gender sensitive for the Bangsamoro peace process. At the regional level and in line with the ASEAN Community Vision 2025, which complements the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the 2017 ASEAN Declaration on Culture of Prevention for a Peaceful, Inclusive, Resilient, Healthy, and Harmonious Society enhances ASEAN-UN cooperation through strategic measures and policies such as transformative social protection, intercultural dialogue, and values-based education. At the multilateral level, the Philippines and Pakistan have co-sponsored a UN General Assembly resolution under the Culture of Peace agenda since 2004. We are pleased to note that reference to the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together is reflected in this annual General Assembly resolution since December 2019. Excellencies, as members of the UNAOC's group of friends, we represent an ideal and an identity and a theme that aspires for a world at peace through mutual respect, acceptance, inclusiveness, and reconciliation. As we celebrate the International Day of Human Fraternity, we are reminded that together, we will emerge from the current crisis stronger with a greater sense of purpose for our shared humanity. We will heal as one United Nations. Thank you, Mr. High Representative and Excellencies. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Angelito Nayan, Minister, the Permanent Mission of the Philippines to the United Nations. And our last speaker on the list is Mr. Bawa Jain, the Secretary General of the World Council of Religious Leaders. Mr. Bawa Jain, the floor is yours. Mr. Bawa Jain, I see that you
okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Ambassador Moratinos. You constantly amaze us by convening us together on some of the most pressing issues. And I also extend our heartiest congratulations and felicitations to Ambassador Idris and Ambassador Nusiba of Egypt and the UAE. Particularly, I want to recognize the two most powerful messages of today, Pope Francis and Sheikh Al-Tayyib. If every one of our religious leaders can espouse these messages, I'm sure the world will be a better place. I recall that in 2000, I recognized my mentor, my rabbi, one of our founders, Rabbi Arthur Schneier, who's at 90, and he's sitting here for 2.5 years, 2.5 hours right now. That is testament to his commitment to the interfaith movement and tolerance and bringing the people together. When we convened the Millennium Summit at the United Nations with the inspiration and guidance of His Excellency Kofi Annan, the then Secretary General, may his soul rest in peace, our vision was to bring the religious leaders of the world together on the critical issues facing humanity, especially the United Nations. Since then, a lot of activities have mushroomed, whether it is the Tony Blair Faith Foundation, King Abdullah's creation. Ambassador Moratinos, you remember we had lunch together in Madrid in 2008 for that. Rabbi Schneier was there, many of the others. Many people on the call today were instrumental in the Millennium Summit taking place. We created the World Council of Religious Leaders. Today, the world has changed dramatically. I think interfaith dialogue is necessary, interfaith work is necessary, but we need to think a little bit beyond that. So in recognition of that, 2 years ago, we launched the Center for Responsible Leadership with the sponsorship of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So we are always grateful to Ambassador Al-Mualimi for that. The chair of the center is His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Karim Al Isa, the Secretary General of the Muslim World League. And when we talk about responsible leaders, is bringing together religious leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, prominent people on the issues most confronting us. And when we look to today, especially in America, I'm a citizen of the United States of America, one of the things we witnessed is how civility has eroded in our public discourse. So starting the end of this month, we are launching a digital platform, and our first convening will be on restoring civility to public discourse. And I think one of the things which constantly inspires me personally is how we can mobilize the communities to support the work of the one international institution we have, the United Nations. For that, Your Excellency, please be aware, I put you on notice that we will be coming to you. We want your leadership, Ambassador Moratinos, as we convene this dialogue. Next, at the end of March, early April, we'll be convening a dialogue with the leadership of President Clinton and the Johns Hopkins on the opioid crisis and the equitable distribution of the vaccines. You know what's happened. You had mobilized us on what we are doing during this pandemic. So we are starting to do this. What do we ask for the Center for Responsible Leadership? We recognize that there's no universally accepted definition of responsible leadership. So we ask you three simple questions. Do you make decisions based on the present or the future? Are those decisions based on conviction or convenience? Third, are they constructive or destructive? You decide for yourself. That is the ethos that guides us. And we want to see this platform is available to you as we start the digital convenings at the end of the month. You can count on our support in every way, Excellency. And we are so grateful to all the people who participate today. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you, Madam Moderator, Ms. Nihal Saad.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bawa Jain, Secretary General of the World Council of Religious Leaders. We reached the end of this segment. I hand it over to His Excellency, Mr. Miguel Moratinos, the High Representative of the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations, to wrap up and conclude the event. The floor is yours, sir. You are muted, Mr. Moratinos. Mr. Moratinos, you are muted.
So thank you, Nihal, and congratulations for the way you moderate this very impressive event in order that we have so many participants, so many people registered, so many speakers, and I have to thank all of them for their contribution and of course for the most important, the commitment to this human fraternity spirit. Of course, my thanks go to the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, of course, the Holiness Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Sheikh Ahmed Tayeb for the fantastic message they brought to this event. Let me, my dear friends, and thank you for all that had been practically 2 hours and a half participating in this, I think, first day of celebrating the International Day of Fraternity. I think I listened to all of you. I took note of all your contribution, but I got, I think, 3 or let's say 3 main conclusion. I would not call them conclusion, but 3 main elements that I think we have to build up after this event. The first one is that, of course, we have succeeded in this first event of the International Day of Fraternity to create this spirit of fraternity. I mean, I think all of us were impressed by the words, the commitment, the encouragement, the messages that fraternity is part of our work. And secondly, I think that the concept of fraternity, as His Holiness Pope Francis has so beautifully described as the new frontier of humanity, I think has today succeeded to be put at the top level of diplomacy, not only on the terminological point of view, because let's be frank, I mean, fraternity has been used in our statement, our declaration, even in certain states like France, is trilogy, and fraternity is the last one. But even in our, way to express the sense of living together, harmony, fraternity was used, but was put at the second, third element. Today, no. Today, fraternity has been elevated, has raised as the one new concept of the 21st century. Pope Francis has said, are we brothers or we are going to be enemies? So we want to be brothers, and brothers is fratelli in Italy. It is fantastic, I think, that the representative of Holy See has shown. Now I have also myself, the encyclic of Tutti Fratelli, of Fratelli Tutti. So the second element is that today, fraternity have not to be only a terminological concept. It has to be an action diplomatic element. In all our diplomatic action, we have to include as an irreversible concept this work of fraternity. Thirdly, I think, of course, we have been expressing speeches, good wishes, good intention, good action, but we need this, we need action. And I think there was this implementation, how we are going to implement this fraternity, the human fraternity. Human fraternity, my friends, is not only fraternity. The document of His Holiness Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar is human fraternity. Humans, the people, are the center of the concept. So we have to identify how we can move forward. And I think there has been many recommendations how to fight against hate speech and how to eliminate this incentivation to violence, how to really go seriously to ask social media organization to really work in order to stop this hate speech, this discrimination in the messages, how we are going to protect and safeguard the religious side, how we can use elements. Have the opportunity to salute our friend Rabbi Artur Schneier, that has been from the first hour following our debate, and how I follow his inspiration word that I know that it comes to us to use, I heard at least 100 times during the speeches the word tolerance, but I know that we have to follow a different concept. It's the mutual acceptance, mutual respect. Let's let our diplomatic environment to take note of what Rabbi Nair has telling us so many years ago. And then education, of course, education has to be part of our role, but also the way religious leaders have to integrate in this common responsibility. And we thought that the UNOOC, United Nations Allowed Civilization, had tried today in the first attempt, the first event we organized in this first day of International Day of Fraternity, to mix. We were discussing ourselves, let's give the floor first to the religious leaders, then give the floor to the ambassadors, to the representative of the member state, and we decide to mix, that they speak together, because we are a part of a sacred family. So that, I think, is the spirit of fraternity that we have to convert into reality in our work. So I just conclude that today we have the day, the International Day of Fraternity. Within, and I see Sima with us, still with us, thank you, Sima, to be so patient, within this Harmony Week. So we have one day of fraternity, we have a week of harmony. How we are going to translate or to transfer these days and this week during the whole year to have a year of fraternity and harmony. That, I think, is the message we have to convey in our work. And so thank you to all of you. And thank you for the ones who have been standing with us during 2.5 hours. And thank you to, of course, the ambassador of Egypt, the ambassador of Emirates, and the Human Fraternity Committee, and to all of them that have followed this event. I thank all my team and all the people who have worked for the successful event. And I hope that we will see in person very soon to demonstrate that we are now fraternity people that wants to make it a reality. So thank you very much, and thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Moratinos, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bravo.
Bye-bye.
Miguel.
Shalom, shalom.
Bravo, Nihal.